evening, everyone. I'd like to call the organizational meeting to order. All members of the board are present. At this time, we would like to do the pledge. Dr. Brown Hall, would you like to lead us in the pledge?
Absolutely. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And just a quick announcement. Please be advised that in the event of a fire emergency and an evacuation should be necessary, an alarm will sound. Please note all marked emergency exits evacuate well away from the building. At this time, we request that everyone turn their cell phones and other electronic devices to silent. Thank you. On to agenda review. May I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Ms. Bleckinger and Mr. Bulin, second. Any discussion? Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Oh, all in favor? Sorry. Lucky mistake. Motion carries unanimously. For the record, our oaths of office, on June 30th, the oaths of office were administered to 3 elected board members, Dr. Spicer, Mr. Buscalia, and Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner, and the superintendent of schools, Dr. Brown Hall's oath was administered prior to this meeting. And Mr. Mana's oath was administered on May 17th. Second roll call, all board members are seated at the table. On to recognition. Are there any recognitions from the board or acknowledgements at this time? Dr. Littman.
As other of my colleagues did, I attended graduation at both North and South. And that's one of those glorious days where you get to shake many people's hands, see all the proud families and all the shouting and celebration. And, so it's just an acknowledgement to all of the schools for how smooth the graduation ceremonies went and the planning that does take place to get those operating in an appropriate way.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. On to public expression. So this evening, no one signed up for public expression. So we'll move on to the adoption of the election process and election of officers. May I have a motion to approve and adopt the election process and the election of officers as presented? Mr. Manna, second, Ms. Poulin. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start with the nominations. Nominations are now in order for the President of the Board of Education. Is there a nomination for the President of the Board of Education? Mr. Bulin?
Yes, it's my pleasure to nominate Sarup to be our president. I think he would be a fine choice. Am I allowed to say something, or am I just nominating?
Just nominating. You can, that's okay. You
I
can
wasn't
say
sure.
a brief, okay.
I think Sarup will be a fine choice. He was the vice president last year and did a very good job, and I think it makes sense for him to ascend to be the president.
Thank you. Dr. Singh, do you accept this nomination?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other nominations for board president? Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner.
Yes, I would like to be. I would like to be. No, I would not like to be. I would like to nominate Ms. Maureen Poulin for president. Thank you.
Ms. Poulin, do you accept this nomination?
I do, thank you.
So each of the nominated candidates, are there any other nominations? Sorry. Okay, I'll consider the nominations closed at this time. Would each of the nominated candidates like to give a brief statement? Dr. Singh?
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Most of the board members, you already know me. And for those members who are new, I'd like to reintroduce myself. I've been in this district for 15 years. I have 2 kids, one kid. One graduated 10 days back. And I have been a volunteer at Maple East, Country Parkway, Transit East. I served in a bunch of committees from school level to district level. And that includes DEI, strategic planning, the audit committee. And presently, I'm on the advisory board for an organization called Bridges from Borders. The reason I'm mentioning this organization is because they have a very aspiring goal. They want to promote mental health in children and bridge the culture gap between the immigrants who are coming in, who are in our area with the local culture. And it's my honor to be a part of that organization. And I've taken a whole bunch of professional development courses over the past 4 years, which includes board leadership, mental health, DEI, and I'm hoping I'll take a few more this year. And I know having a full-time job, being a parent, and being a board president takes a lot of time commitment. I had the opportunity to be the vice president. I'm well aware of the responsibilities and the time commitment it takes to be on the board. And I realize board work is teamwork. A board president needs to be a good listener, be unbiased, build consensus, a good communicator, and a team player. I believe I have the qualities to be a good board president. On a tangential note, I've been told by my friends last week that I am the first South Asian or Indian American to be running for the president of a Western New York school board. And it would be my honor to be the president of our school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Ms. Poulin?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the nomination. I'm seeking this position not to advance a particular personal agenda or any underlying party platform, but to really put my experience, qualities, and skills that I've honed over my life and career in service to the Williamsville Central School District School Board. I'm a single mom and a grandma of 2 students in Williamsville schools. My passion for education, as I said previously, began at an early age playing school in my garage. And it led me to pursue a career in education where I served as a teacher, a counselor, and a principal, as well as a special education case manager. In all of these roles, I developed communication skills and relationship building skills. I was widely known in the school districts in which I served as a collaborative administrator and a consensus builder, which I could certainly bring those skills to the board. I pride myself in being able to listen to varying opinions and ideas and seek common ground to move toward achieving shared goals. We are a board of education, and I believe that the education has to start with us. Since being elected to the board, I've continued to attend trainings to sharpen my expertise about the role of the board and the national best practices and the position that I seek. As president and a lifelong learner, I will continue to learn, and I will encourage all board members to take advantages of opportunities available. I will also seek to create those opportunities for our board. I believe also that the education of our Williamsville community at large is important. I would like to evaluate some of our procedures and develop with the board more effective ways to engage with our community and to provide them with the tools to be active participants in our schools and community. During this past year, having served side by side with our past president as parliamentarian, I had an up-close view of procedures and responsibilities and feel well prepared for the role. I have the time, the flexibility, and desire to be fully available for board members, parents, teachers, the community by phone, text, or in person. In sum, I want to put my experience and expertise in service to this community. Thank you for your consideration of a vote for me.
Thank you, Ms. Poulin. Okay, at this time, I will take a roll call vote.
Any endorsements or comments from the other board members?
Okay, any endorsements or comments from any other board members? Okay, seeing none at this time, I will carry on with the roll call vote. I'll start off and I'll call on you and just vote. You're voting yes, and just please state who you're voting for. The person, please state the name of the person you will be voting for. Okay, I will start off with the.
Procedurally, I thought historically it was you ask each person, each person is asked individually. How do you support person A and person B?
Well, I did this last year, so
Yeah.
I'm going to continue.
I'm
Okay.
Okay.
And we can,
For clarity, thank you.
Ms. Fleckinger, voting for,
Swaroop Singh.
thank you. Mr. Buellin,
Sarup Singh.
Mr. Biscaglia. Oh, sorry, Ms. Kazmarek Bogner,
Ms. Maureen Poulin.
Mr. Biscaglia. Should I come back to you?
Yes.
Okay. Dr. Littman,
Dr. Singh, please.
Mr. Manna? Sorry, Ms. Poulin.
I will vote for Maureen Poulin.
Mr. Manna,
I'll vote for Miss Maureen Poulin.
Dr. Singh.
That's spicy.
Sorry, Dr. Spicer,
Miss Maureen Poulin.
Dr. Singh.
I vote for myself.
Back to you, Mr. Biscaglia.
We have a recess.
I'm a history teacher, so Swaroop Singh.
Okay, that gets 5 votes for Dr. Singh. Dr. Singh, congratulations, you have been elected president. Okay. And we'll move on to vice president, and then we'll switch things around a little bit.
I have a comment.
Yes, go ahead.
I think if a board member wants to take the time before they vote, I mean, it's a roll call vote. We could all do that thing where we take our time and want to come back. I think that we should not vote, ask anybody else to vote until the person makes up their mind and votes. Because we could all play that game of waiting to be the last vote. And I don't appreciate that.
Okay,
Well, I was undecided until literally that second.
noted.
Well, then nobody else should have been called to cast their vote.
Okay, duly noted. Okay, on to nominations for vice president for the Board of Education. Is there a nomination for the vice president of the Board of Education? Mr. Buellin.
It is my pleasure to nominate Mrs. Bleckinger to be vice president. I had the honor of serving her with last year on the board, and I think she would make a fine vice president.
Okay, Ms. Bleckinger, do you accept this nomination?
I do.
Any other nominations for vice president? Dr. Spicer.
I'd like to nominate Crystal Kazmierzak-Bogner for the position of vice president. She is phenomenal at knowing her policies inside and out, backwards and forwards, and I noticed that as a participant in the audience this last year.
Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner, do you accept this nomination?
I do.
Any other nominations for vice president of the Board of Education? Dr. Littman?
Yes, since I did not ask anybody to nominate me, I would like to self-nominate.
Do you accept your nomination?
Yes, yes, I would like to. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Each of the nominated candidates have a few minutes to give a brief statement. We'll start off with Ms. Bleckinger.
Thank you. Thank you for the nomination for School Board Vice President. And while I may not know the policies as well as some board members, they're both the same accolades and awards and years of experience. I do have the energy and passion and what it takes. I truly firmly believe that I have what it takes to be the vice president of this board. I have unique qualities and attributes that make me the best person for this role. I'm a natural leader. I'm driven by passion and energy, ready to tackle concerns and find solution. As a young, vibrant individual, I bring a fresh perspective to the table, infused with enthusiasm to drive positive change. This past year has given me the opportunity to observe, learn, and understand the policies in depth, the processes in depth. As a result, I have gained valuable insights into how our school district functions and the challenges it faces. I'm involved in the schools I support as a BOE member, an active member of the Williamsville Education Foundation, and also I'm part of the Wellness Committee and seeing firsthand what our district is doing to promote the well-being of our students and teachers. What sets me apart is my compassion for community members' concern, which is matched by my unwavering tenacity to navigate and resolve problems effectively. I possess strong organizational skills, and as a good listener, I ensure that all voices are heard and considered. Also, having a child in the district means I am present in the buildings, connecting with teachers, administrators, and most importantly, the students. I'm not just an observer, I'm actively engaged with the daily realities of our educational system, enabling me to understand the challenges and opportunities firsthand. Transparency and effective communication are crucial in this role, and I can assure you that I will be open and honest in my endeavors. You can trust me to prioritize the best interests of our students and community. I pride myself on being relatable and relevant to the concerns and aspirations of our community. I believe that building relationships and understanding the needs of various stakeholders is vital to fostering a thriving environment. A strong leader knows they can't do everything alone, and I have the proven track record of bringing the right people together to solve problems collaboratively. By harnessing the collective expertise of our educators, parents, and community members, we can make informed decisions that lead to positive and lasting impacts of our school district. I can exercise the duties of the president in case of absence or disability. In conclusion, I believe that my natural leadership, energy, and community involvement, dedication, relatability, and ability to bring people together make me the ideal candidate for school board vice president. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenshire. Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner.
Thank you. Since I already provided a summary of my leadership experiences and quality at the June board meeting, I feel no need to repeat all of that this evening, so I'm going to keep mine short and sweet tonight. I do want to emphasize my passion for public education and my desire to support educational excellence for all of our students. By pursuing this role as vice president, I now want to take the next step to further strengthen our board and our governance team. For me, teamwork is key. My leadership style embraces building relationships and team collaboration. I realize that board officers have no additional power, only additional responsibilities, and I am certainly prepared to put in the extra time and effort needed to fulfill those responsibilities, and hope that you will allow me the opportunity to do so by voting for me this evening as your next vice president. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner. Dr. Littman.
Thank you. And start off by saying there are some great candidates for all of these positions tonight, and I appreciate the opportunity to work with all of them. My comments, again, won't be too much about my background, but just some other general thoughts. An organization is judged by its leadership, practices, and decision-making. The same is true with the Board of Education. The leadership selected for an organization should have prior leadership experience and strong decision-making skills. We judge any board by its ability to make quality decisions. In the hiring of educational leaders, we select those with the most experience and those with the strongest credentials. In selecting board officers, it should be the same. It should not be political, but on objective criteria. That is part of our due diligence and community responsibility. The question I ask is, how can I be of best service and of value and make the best contribution to develop and to strengthen our board and its future leadership? Again, I've been the longest serving board member, and in those 11 years, I think I've gained a wealth of experience in board operations and decision-making that I'd be glad to share with our board. Again, I could use my board leadership experience. I have served 2 terms as our board president, 2 terms as vice president, and stepping in where needed. I have links with NYSBA, ES, the Erie County School Board Association, PTA, and other local boards. I've received both the NYSBA Excellence and Achievement Award. I have taught leadership at the graduate level and leadership communication. I've held a number of leadership roles in various organizations. But again, in the end, it's not really about me, but it's about we and how we can best work together to have the strongest board we can. Again, our emphasis, as I've said before, must be on improving the onboarding process and enhance professional development, areas where I would like to focus, as well as working with the new board president. Again, I'll repeat, in the hiring of educational leaders, we select those with the most relevant experience, those with the strongest credentials, and it should be the same in board officers. It should not be political, but objective. And again, I have more completed years as a board officer than the longest serving board members that should count in a position as a vice president. In conclusion, as the longest serving board member with the longest board leadership experience, I have the responsibility to serve as a guide and to help prepare our board for the future, a future that supports all of our students' needs. I ask for your support as vice president to assist our new president, Dr. Singh, in the responsibilities that he has to move our board forward. And I thank all of you for what you do. And I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Littman. Okay, at this time, I will take another roll call vote. Please state the name of the person you will be voting yes for. And we'll start with Ms. Fleckinger.
Myself?
Mr. Bueller.
Ms. Blackinger.
Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner.
Myself, Crystal Kazmarek-Bogner.
Mr. Biscaglia.
Miss Kazmarek Bogner.
Dr. Littman.
Oh, I'll vote for Michael Littman.
Ms. Poulin.
Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner.
Mr. Manna.
Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner.
Dr. Singh.
Spicer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Dr. Spicer.
Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner.
And then Dr. Singh.
Ms. Blackinger.
Okay, so, well, Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner, you have 5 votes. Congratulations. You are the Vice President of the Board of Education.
Dr. Singh.
So at this time, go on to this, the oath of officers. So I'm going to have the oath over here for Dr. Singh and Mrs. Kazmarek-Bogner. Step over to the flag area, please. So you're going to raise your right hand. Yeah, and I'll just rotate. And then your reach. That makes sense? Okay. I, Ms. Kazmarek-Bogner, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of New York. And the Constitution of the State of New York. That I will faithfully discharge the duties of for the Williamsville Central School District according to the best of my ability. According to the best of my ability. Would you please sign?
Okay, I'm sorry. I was like, I pulled it towards me. No. Oh my God, no.
Yeah, I will do that in one moment. Thank you.
Shake my life.
You could stay there for one second. And so at this time, we'll take a few minutes to rearrange the seating at the table, and the board president, Dr. Singh, will preside the meeting. So give us a few minutes. Hold on, Nick.
do it.
Yes. Yeah.
And just put
They give the
the
next
on it.
important job is carrying the name placards.
Through the vice.
We're not moving anybody. I used to sit by experience and news people sit. And
I turned mine off.
Flip it on, 'cause there you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So whenever you're ready.
Do I do this?
do it out. Don't hinder me.
Should we wait for Dr. Brown Hall?
Say something and then you need to do that. And then you have to swear me in.
Oh, okay.
For Dr. Brown Hall? There we go. I guess that's what she
You
said.
administer the oath of office to Lynn?
Sorry?
You have to administer the oath of office to Lynn.
Oh. No?
Well, say, read the, can you?
Good evening, everyone. The next item on the agenda is oath of office to the officers, district clerk.
Doesn't bite.
I, Lynn Carey,
Do solemnly swear
You.
I guess the next item is annual appointments.
so you have to appoint a parliamentarian.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Per policy 1320, I wish to appoint Ms. Blackinger as the parliamentarian / timekeeper for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Is there a swearing in for that too? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda items 8B through 14A as presented? Dr. Littman, Ms. Pullen? I guess. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. And item 8B, sorry, I'm guessing we all went through all through 14. Item 15, Board of Education appointments. The Board of Education liaison guidelines and appointments for 2023-24. Approval of the district-wide liaison guidelines and assignments will be at the August 8th regular board meeting. At this time, are there any questions or comments on assignments that are listed in board docs?
Yes, I just wanted to make a comment. I attended a webinar by NISBA on legal and policy implications of school board committees. And during that webinar, they stated that school board members should not participate as shared decision-making team members. And I did seek some further guidance about that. And apparently the Commissioner of Education has held in several instances that the intent of the regulation is not for board members to serve on the committee, but for board to work in collaboration with the district-wide committee in developing and amending the shared decision-making plan. So I move that we amend the appointments listed under other by deleting the district shared decision-making team liaison assignment, which happens to be me. But that's not what I am asking for.
Are there any other questions, comments? I mean, if you haven't sent in your request,
She made a motion.
are you-
Yeah, I made a motion to amend that, so
You have a second?
all in favor of the motion?
I'll second it for the record.
Motion amendment, the motion to amend is passed unanimously. I mean, at this time, if you haven't signed up for your liaison assignments, please send your request to Lynn.
As a new member, I wasn't sure what that process was for liaison assignments, so that would be good.
I mean, usually we pick, we ask liaisons for the PTSAs for different schools, as well as the different committees, ESB, ECASB, and in one case, one is, and NISBA too. So most of our board members have already requested what they wanted, and that should be on board docs.
It
If you
is.
have any specific requests, you can add that to the list,
Okay,
and then we can have it for the August meeting.
I do. Okay.
Dr. Singh.
sorry, another thing. Because I'll no longer be serving in the role of on the district shared decision-making team, I am willing to take another role, and I would be interested in the PTSA council if there is no one else that would want that position. Were you planning to take
No,
that?
PTSA council, the president, vice president all attend anyways.
Oh, okay. Very good. It wasn't, there's no one listed on the agenda as being assigned to the PTSA council, so we will share that then. Thank you.
Any other questions? Item 16, Board of Education Operations. Work of the Board of Education for 2023-24. May I have a motion to approve the work of the Board of Education for 2023-2024 as presented? Have a second? Is there a discussion?
You want to say who it is so that Lynn can write it down? So
Oh.
that was Stuart.
Oh.
It was, right.
I firsted it.
First it did.
Dylan,
Ask a question.
Yeah, no.
in School visit.
is it 16?
16B.
We're in 16A now.
I know.
Yeah, so for the discussion, there were two items that I suggest revising under the work of the Board of Education. The first is related to the NISBA best practice for board members to annually affirm their adherence to the Code of Ethics. And that would be by adding reference to our policy 6110 Code of Ethics. And the second is under individual board member responsibilities. 4F currently reads, state clearly when not participating as private citizen in a public meeting, district-related discussion on social media, or any public writing. And I believe it should state clearly when participating. So to delete the not, we should state clearly when we are participating as a public citizen in a public meeting, district-related discussion on social media, or any public writing. Therefore, I move to amend the work of the board so that the bolded section of the first paragraph reads, Board of Education hereby affirms its commitment to policy 6110, Code of Ethics for board members and all district personnel, as well as the following joint code of conduct, operating principles, and board guidelines. And so item F4 reads, state clearly when participating as a private citizen in a public meeting, district-related discussion on social media, or any public writing.
So moved.
All in favor of the amendment?
We need to,
Need a second.
second, we need a second,
How'd you say?
and then discussion.
Sorry, any discussion?
Oh, I'm second.
Oh, no, yeah.
Mr.
Bullen.
Bullen.
Dr. Sway, call out who's second.
I guess
Question.
no questions or any questions?
Any comment?
Somebody have a question?
And then we had this. Okay. Oh.
All in favor of the amendment? Amendment passes unanimously. Item 16B, 2023-24 Board of Education Guidelines for School Visits. May I have a motion to approve the 2023-24 Board of Education Guidelines for School Visits as presented? Ms. Kaczmarek-Bogner, can I have a second? Ms. Blackinger? Any questions? Dr. Littman?
Discussion.
Yeah, just comments. Again, go back to historical things, when the dinosaurs roamed the earth and all of those things. But, you know, the last 2 years I've been on the board, the school visits really have been showcases of 2 or 3 instructors and a short meeting with the school administrator, which is much different than a historic where we would meet with faculty and talk about issues, and we don't have that opportunity anymore. It's sort of like you have 20 minutes at the school, come in, come out, and it if our responsibility is to visit schools and see and interact with the instructors, I think we're missing part of that. And that's just my comment. You know, I've attended just about every one, and they are of great value to see our fine educators doing what they do, working with students and having innovative programs. But again, I think we need to do more to interact when we're at each individual school building, because it gives the teachers the opportunity to interact with us that they may not normally have. Because again, when we go, we see 3 or 4 teachers, not the 100 who might be in the building.
May I?
On the question? Yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Go ahead. No.
And I guess you have to understand, and I understand you say historically what has been done, the intent of the school visits, because my understanding is the board wanted to see excellent education in action. So when the board agreed to have STEAM in the buildings, the board wanted to see STEAM
Yes.
effectively working in the building. When the board wanted to have learning labs in the building, the board wanted to see effective learning labs taking place. The board wants to see instruction. They want to see success in learning. That's why the board set up the separate meetings with the teachers after school, so that if teachers want to come and talk to the board like they did at East,
Yes.
they have that opportunity. But it's my understanding, I think the most effective thing is truly for the board to stay focused on what the board's goal is, right? Policy and excellence in education. And you do that by seeing it in action.
Yeah,
So that was my understanding for the
Yeah,
board.
I agree with that, and those are valuable experiences. But again, part of what it says is that we need to be interacting in the schools with teachers, and I don't think we the way that is set up, we've done enough of that. But that's again my thoughts.
I'm not, can you point to me where that says that?
Mm,
18B, because number
let
2.
me find it.
In the meantime,
Please.
just to multitask,
Yeah.
I think that the board has any number of opportunities to engage with the faculty and staff. It's not just, pigeonholed into these short little, shows we have at the school. And I've been, in my short time on the board, I've been multiple PTSA meetings, emails. I've been to, retirement parties. And and I know we are all out there and accessible. And I think, you can have a more meaningful, in-depth conversation with someone outside of that school because they're so constricted on their time. They can't really get into a lot of details in this little bit of time we're there. So, I mean, if the feedback I'm getting a lot of feedback from teachers, including our school visits, not just pigeonholed into the school meetings.
If I may also, when we had our meeting with the teachers at East High School, there were a number of teachers who commented to me how much they really enjoyed that format rather than when we tried to meet with them prior to my being on the board before school when they're trying to get ready for classes, that was not really not helpful or conducive to their preparation for the day. Maybe it was convenient for the board, but it wasn't convenient for them. So I think that's an important factor for us to consider. I have thoroughly enjoyed the visits the way they have been structured, which is all I have known as a board member. I also wanted to ask us to look, though, at that statement that we are looking to affirm, where it says that each board member will be asked to sign up to attend a minimum of 3 school visits. And is that reasonable and realistic? If not, then we need to address that before we accept that as policy.
Can I add 2 things to that? As a working teacher,
Yeah.
these are particularly hard for me to attend. It forces me to take a half day. I would say this, as a teacher, when board visits, I find it a dog and pony show. And less instruction gets done than when you're not there. I think the forum that we should undertake is meeting with the teachers after school. I think we should do it at every school. I know it's a big time commitment from us, but in order to be fully informed and not in getting in their face for instruction, which is on them, not on us, I think it would be better if we made annual time to go see each school in that form like we did at East. But as you said, the 3 visits is very onerous. Just, it would, for me at least. I don't know, Mike, do you disagree or agree?
I mean, 3 visits are tough. Yes. I mean, and in terms of like the actual visits, I still think they're productive in terms of seeing as a board. We act as a board, not as an individual board member. Therefore, seeing the visitations is good to see because we are we're implementing policies based around a lot of it based around academic needs or things like that. So we have to observe that. It helps in our end of the year. Dropping the ball on what I'm trying to say. The end of the year evaluation. Thank you. Which helps in those terms as well. And that's why it's important to see that way. I mean, ultimately, our teachers are great, and we don't need to see a dog and pony show, but it is important for us to overlook, as Dr. Brown Hall said, like the learning labs is an example of something we have to oversee and make sure it's implemented the right way. But the 3 visits are tough.
But it says if unable to.
Unable to, as long as, and in the past, I mean, if you're going through past procedures, we've always tried to get at least 3 there, which for the most part, we have been able to do.
You're right.
Okay.
But
I just wanted to be sure that we weren't putting an undue burden on someone. But
No,
I understand. Thank you.
but I would
rewrite it.
agree with what you've said, Mr. Bulin, about being more present for teachers, but I would not want to take away what we are already doing. So
No.
add on, yes.
Yeah,
but-
and I'm not saying take away.
Okay.
I think it might be a good idea to get more dialogue.
Dr. Spicer?
Less.
Yes, absolutely. I think my colleagues have all made great points. I'm really excited about the school visits. That's one of the reasons that I ran for the board. But professionally as a dean of students, I also know that we are the voice of the students as well. So I think it's critically important also to see students in the classroom. I'm not a teacher, so I want to see, I tell students that they tell me what it's like in the classroom all the time so that I can best represent them around tables that they're not at. So I think that piece of it is really powerful as well.
Okay.
Sorry,
any other discussion?
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on what Mr. Bulin said, which I think is a good idea. Because again, when we have teachers from 14 schools coming to one location, less people may show up. It may be of value to have an end of the day, although some teachers like to rush out the door because they have coaching and other responsibilities. But it might be another option for us to think about, which is to, have more school-specific or level meetings versus just, as we did last year, where the attendance was reasonable but small.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Littman, in my discussions with the teachers at the conversation with board meeting, I asked what their recommendation was, and obviously it was only a handful of teachers, but the feedback that I received from the teachers that I spoke with was that maybe level meetings, so that we had a meeting, a conversations with staff for elementary and a conversations for staff with middle and a conversations for staff with high school was the feedback that I received at that time. The teachers.
As I stated, I think level meetings may be of great value. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other points of discussion? All in favor?
I actually have a question.
Yeah.
So should we decide to codify this? We just decide, we think that this is a good idea, but let's move forward and do something about it, just not talk about it. Should we do we need on the next board meeting to have a motion or an agenda item that says that we're going to go do this? Have level meetings once a year with high school? Is that something we need to do? Is that how it works? I guess that's my question.
May I make a suggestion?
Sure.
And this is not to be funny, but I think what you want to do is have a robust discussion about dates and times.
Yes.
I mean, as a collective, we have
Okay.
difficulty finding a date for an orientation or anything like that. So adding more evening dates. I mean, let's try to set our work session dates right for the public first.
Right.
We'll get these dates set. And then let's look at what the calendar looks like outside of the PTSA meetings
Right.
that you all volunteer to attend, because you don't want to stretch yourself thin, because then we get 2 board members that are able to make it. And you have all these teachers that have come to talk to board members, right?
Yeah, no, I understand completely what you're saying.
I mean, that's a good point, worth looking into.
Yes.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion passed unanimously. Item 16C, Board of Education 2023-24 meeting calendar. We have a motion to approve the 2023-24 Board of Education meeting calendar as presented. Ms. Beckinger and Ms. Kasprat-Bogner.
On the question. Is there any will of the board to look at that March 12th meeting? And I only say this because I have travel plans for that February meeting, and I don't want to miss another March meeting. To move that March meeting to the week after the 12th, make it March 19th. I know it's 2 weeks in a row of meetings. I just asked, I'll survive either way. There's a chance to, change it. I'll submit to the will of the board.
I know there are some guidelines in terms of when we need to hold the different budget forums and work sessions. I'm not sure if it applies to this meeting in particular because I don't have those in front of me. But I think we would need to look at that before we changed that. Are we approving these tonight? Yes.
You're approving them tonight, but you can amend them once we look at the budget breakdown and make sure that we're within the day requirements.
Assumed it was just a regular board meeting because it's that second Tuesday, not counting the calendar if that was the days we had to have it. So
Yeah.
I'm willing to fine approving it tonight and then looking at it again. Thank you for the suggestion.
We'll have it for August 8th.
Okay, so we are approving, no? Yeah. Okay, all in favor of approving the calendar? That's unanimously. Item 16D, Board of Education retreat. May I have a motion to approve the Board of Education retreat on August 17th as presented? Kasprat-Bogner, Ms. Blackinger? Any discussion?
I know that I will not be able to attend. I have another conflict I put that in the email just so.
I mean, any other discussion on the date? All in favor? Motion passes unanimously. Item 16E, media guidelines. May I have a motion to approve the media guidelines as presented? Any takers? Mr. Manna? Oh, we had a second request, right? Ms. Pullen, any discussion? All in favor? Motion approves unanimously. Item 16F, Board of Education Community Forum date for 2023-24. The community forum will be held in the fall of 23 and spring of 24. Dates and location will be discussed at a future board meeting. So, any comments or questions? Okay. Agenda item 17, other matters, consent agenda approval.
Can I?
I would like to, I would move to move I'm sorry, the special, which would be under Superintendent's Report, item CB, the update on the special education presentation. Can we move that agenda item to before, where are we now?
We're at 17.
17.
Okay, right before the consent agenda.
To which item is this?
The motion. I second. I'll second
Moving item 23B
it. To now.
to now.
Okay. All right.
I second that.
Got a motion? Can we get a second?
I second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
So that was seconded by,
Dr. Lemon.
Yeah,
Well,
Dr. Lippman. Motion passes unanimously.
Yeah, Crystal.
as superintendent, at this time, I'd like to welcome our consultants from the Western New York Education Service Council under the direction of Executive Director Tony Day. They will be presenting the special education findings. The board remembers and the community remembers, we asked the Western New York Education Service Council to come in and do a deep dive into our special education practices and programming in the district. And they were with us for the past 6 months. So they're coming now to present their findings, and we will be receiving a written report. The board will in the next couple of weeks. So I will ask for Tony Day to take it away. Thank you very much for being here this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Brownell. Thank you very much for your generosity in moving us up. We're appreciative of that. So, you know, I certainly miss board meetings. But again, I try to introduce myself to everyone, but my name's Tony Day. I'm the Executive Director of the Western New York Educational Service Council. And I was able to work with a team of really talented educators. And I was really the project coordinator. The consultants were our experts in special education, and they did a lot of the legwork. And as a team, we're here tonight to kind of present to you what we believe and what we would recommend for the board to consider going forward. With us tonight are one half of our team. I'd like to introduce Lynn Simorensky. Lynn is the retired Director of Special Education in the Orchard Park System. This is Janet Gajewski. She is the retired Special Education Director from the Depew Schools. John Cole, who is the retired Director of Special Programs at Sweet Home, who worked alongside me for many years. He hurt his back last night and can't move. So, and if you knew John's this ball, a huge person, and to have him is kind of ironic that he can't move. So, and then also Sadie Camarada, who's the retired Special Education Director from the Lancaster School. So together as a team of people, we come to you tonight to present you what we found and to be able to move forward. So thank you, Nick. And so in this process, we're also very mindful of your time, and we'll try to be very concise. We'll be returning to Dr. Brown Hall by week's end. The full report and appendices, which now total 63 pages. And within that will be lots of detail. Tonight, we'll try to provide you with a summary and an overview. We'll answer any questions that you might have. And we'll make ourselves available to Dr. Brown Hall and anybody in the district to provide more detail and go into greater depth. Before we get started, we recognize that in a district this size, there's 1,200 students with an IEP in this district. That is outside of the city of Buffalo, is probably the largest special education enrollment in all of Western New York. And it's a big look. So when we do our work, we spend a lot of time and we got great assistance from Mr. Scanzuzzo and Dr. Balin and the entire central office team. But we recognize that what we're able to see in this review is very small compared to what you see every single day in classrooms across the breadth of 13 schools. And so all of our findings are always tentative. And they're presented for your consideration as a board, as a district, to determine what to do next. We frame all of our projects in the form basically as a research project. We try to frame what it is we're trying to learn. What are the questions we're trying to respond? And it's that those questions that we spent time early on with Dr. Brown Hall and Mr. Scanzu to get clear about. The biggest question is to what extent does the district special education program follow accepted best practices? What areas are most aligned to best practice and what areas might be improved? Along with that, there's some guiding questions that are connected with that. How well does the Williamsville Special Ed program meet the needs of its students? What is the continuum of services that's provided for the students? And are those services meeting the needs of the identified students? What is the continuum provided for our self-contained students? And is that continuum suitable for the diverse needs of the district's students with disabilities? And finally, a look at the leadership functions of the special education department. Are they adequately staffed for a district this size to be able to do the work that needs to be done? In our review, there are 3 phases. We start by recognizing that teachers need to teach and administrators need to run their buildings. We start by doing everything we can to learn without actually interfering with actual schooling. So we are provided with reams of documentation from the district and also data that's available publicly on websites. We look at, in that process, we establish some hypotheses based on that review. But that review in desks across Western New York removed from schools, they need to be verified as best we can. And we do that in what we call the interview phase. We test those hypotheses by talking to the people most impacted by the program. We talk with parents, we talk with teachers, and if we had more time and where it would be appropriate, you talk with students, but it's a challenge, with given the developmental level of kids to get good insight there. But we try to verify, and we did a lot of interviewing, as you'll see in a little bit. And then finally, we go into a recommendation phase. Based on what we've learned and based on what we believe, what do we think are prudent courses of action that the district could consider to take a program that is good and turn it into great, by that old maxim that talked about companies going good to great. You have a good system. You have a system with lots of resources. You have kids come to school and they do well. But to what extent could it be great? To what extent could it be? What more could it be? So when we talk about the very first thing we kind of look at is how well is the program doing? And we look at some key metrics. We look at achievement. So we're looking at, when you look at data, you have to compare it. A number by itself is meaningless. You have to compare it to a standard, which the standard we always say is all meaning all, right? That's always our goal. Another comparison metric is how have we done compared to the past? Where are we trending? Are we trending in a positive direction? Are we trending in a negative? And finally, how do we compare to districts that are like us? And there's no district, honestly, in Western New York that's exactly like Williamsville. Demographically, diversity, economic status, nobody's close, but we did look for districts that have similar demographic profiles that would provide a good comparison metric. So we look at, you can see up on there, we've got the most important metric for kids in K-12 schooling is graduation. Do they graduate? And do they graduate with a Regents diploma, a measure of rigor? Because there's many safety net possibilities for students to get a diploma, but how many can bypass the safety nets and earn a Regents diploma, which is much more indicative of a level of rigor, readying for the next level of education. We also look at New York State testing program. Certainly there's the New York State testing program is not a perfect system. It provides an audit, though, a dipstick of where kids are against a standard that's set by the state. And as some educators may know, the 3 to 8 testing program, proficiency in that does not necessarily mean equal to high school proficiency. It's usually a higher standard. Those that are proficient at elementary and middle, you don't need to be proficient to be, excuse me, sorry, Ms. Flop, people at home, sorry about that. So we look at some metrics that are tied to experience too, because it's not just what you achieve, but that experience that kids have. And so we look at attendance and chronic attendance. We look at how many kids, what percentage of kids with special needs are missing more than 10% of the days each year. Because it can be indicative of many things, but it is a connection to that school experience. Kids that want to come to school find ways to get to school. Sometimes there's many other factors that impact that. We also look at something that the state had that I was actually personally in favor of. It's called the College and Career Readiness Index that was available for 2 years, and it's not since the pandemic, they have not revived it, but it's a weighted system that looks at outcomes for kids at graduation in terms of additional pieces that prepare them for education beyond high school. And it can be everything from enrollment in college, blended classes, college credit-bearing classes, certificates of biliteracy, other pieces, CTE pieces that make them more ready. And then finally, we spent a lot of time looking at anecdotal and perceptual data. We talked to teams of teachers from all 13 district schools, and we ended up talking to, we made parent phone calls to approximately 27 parents, some that came from a pool randomly selected by the district. And quite frankly, we also watched board meeting film, and we sought opportunities to speak with those that are passionate enough to come and speak with you on a regular basis. And from that, we could put all of that together in that way of trying to bring the data together. And what have we kind of found out about the kids' achievement and their experience? Generally, it's good. Here in Williamsville, you exceed all measures, all New York State averages and expectation. The only thing you don't meet is participation in the New York State 3 to 8 assessments. That's actually one of the highest refusal rates in Western New York, which makes their results difficult to interpret. But when some measures, though, when you compare to schools of similar demographic, the Williamsville students with special needs performance is average. In some cases, it's below average. The difference being literacy at high school Regents examination and participation and achievement and proficiency levels in 3-day testing seems to be very strong. Other areas, not as strong. So in that context, we take a look at that's kind of the experiences. Kids doing okay, they probably could do better. Right? The experience is okay, but could it be better? So we then look at to what extent is the district adhering to best practice. And there are some principles that we follow in making that distinction. And the first really doesn't have to do with special education. It has to do with the marriage of intervention systems and how they support students heading into identification for special education. We believe that the best special education systems have their genesis in strong programs of structured, 3-tiered, multi-tiered systems of supports that support kids academically and behaviorally, with clear criteria and tiers that kids work through and data to demonstrate whether or not they're making progress. We believe in the use of what's called a dual discrepancy model, which at its very basic says that we want to see if students are strong compared to their peers. Is there a gap or a discrepancy compared to their peers? Not only in just their pure performance, but also in their growth. So that is there a discrepancy, and does their growth lag? So therefore the gap in their performance widen in their current setting. And we believe the best settings look at that data prior to and after identification before making decisions to move to more restrictive placements. We are a strong believer that the best experience for kids are Williamsville kids educated in Williamsville schools by Williamsville teachers alongside general education students of their peers in general education classrooms. That's the best experience. And that the movement of students out of that general education setting is really only to be done when that dual discrepancy model is in place and the interventions that are in place are not actively keeping kids, closing gaps or at least maintaining. And we believe that the strongest systems have a well-defined, well-understood continuum of services that are aligned horizontally, meaning across at 6 elementary schools, there's an understanding what the services are and that there's a consistency, and that vertically, that once a service is in place, the needs of the kids are met as they move vertically through the system, rather than all of a sudden not having a service that they needed at one level and then it's not present in another. If a student had a service in one building and they transferred to another building, that service would still be available because the services meet the needs of the kids don't meet the needs of the system. So what we know about the program is that you have a lot of resources for special education students. You should be very proud of the resources that you bring to bear to support special education kids. The staffing ratios are very strong. There are state regulations that have opportunities for caseloads to be as high as 25-1. You don't come anywhere near that. Most teachers have case levels far below that, very reasonable. You employ as a core intervention practice and inclusion setting something called integrated co-teaching. This is an option that the state allows districts to utilize, which means that the special education teacher is in the classroom with special education students 100% of the time for a course of study. In consultant teaching, which is also allowed, it's set by a number of minutes per week based on the needs of the kids. But here you employ integrated co-teaching as a support for all students that are included, regardless of the level of need. And it's a rich program because while the teacher is in that room for the full time, they can't be in other places. So it does generally require more resources, personnel to make it happen than not. And the class sizes, not only in inclusive settings, but also in self-contained settings they're strong. While you have some classes that are identified as 15-1, seldom do you get to 15. Oftentimes you're low 10, 11, sometimes single digits. And so you're not pushing. You have a label that allows flexibility, but you're not coming close to that. And those class sizes are generally pretty strong. You have, by all accounts, both the staff and the parents, you have a lot of people working really hard for kids. They love the kids. As a rule, the teachers believe they're working really hard. Their principals support that, and the parents that we spoke to are very supportive, generally speaking, of the teachers and the work with students in buildings. The resource, however, when you talk about the resources, there is not necessarily equitable distribution of the resources by level. For instance, at the elementary level, you have many more resources at the elementary level than you do at the secondary level. You have, in some elementary buildings with higher enrollments, higher overall enrollments, and higher special education enrollments, you have the same number of inclusion teachers as you will in another building that has a smaller enrollment. And thus the ratios are different, and in some buildings, teachers are challenged to do anything other than provide the co-teaching, while others have opportunities for additional intervention, to run support periods. So it's not necessarily always evenly distributed. Go. So I'd like to let
So I'll step in at this point. So to what extent does the district education program follow best practice? And thinking of best practice as far as student responsiveness, the intervention system that is employed prior to the question of placement in special education, we found that it's neither well-defined or broadly understood from building to building. While the district has a published intervention plan, the plan elements, however, are not the same from building to building in terms of interventions available from grade level to grade level. There's no distinction of a 3-tiered set of interventions, which increase frequency and intensity for the student. Universal screens are administered at both the elementary and middle school, and the elementary school, in addition, will assess elementary literacy. Other measures are used throughout buildings, but it's inconsistent between the buildings. There's no evidence of clear criteria understood by the buildings at the different educational levels, and the assignment to tiers of intervention of increasing frequency and intensity. Only one tier of interventions was found at the middle school. Spotty interventions were found at the high school. The elementary seemed to have a richer array of options than the middle or the high school. And instructional support teams are in place at both the elementary and the middle school. However, the high school does not have one at this time, and we were told that some function more on an ad hoc basis. Secondly, the use of data-driven decision-making around initial referrals and placement changes is inconsistent. There was found to be little evidence of student progress goal setting and systematic collection of learning data to gauge the progress of individual students in closing that learning gap that Tony talked about. Special education coordinators mandate the use of learning data in the data decision-making process. However, there doesn't appear to be consistent expectations as to the data to be used, nor the criteria in determining the student responsiveness to the intervention.
So the data that's being used, there is data being used, and in coordinator we meant director, so we just wait, so everybody has the same nomenclature. There's data being used, but it varies building to building in terms of how much and what's being brought to the table. And so data is used in decision making, but it's the quantity and consistency is greater at the elementary and weakens as you move forward. In terms of district's continuum of services, what we did, this is what our best effort at one page, the district's continuum of services. So what you see is by level, you see elementary, top, middle, high school, and then across the from left to right, you will see the layers in terms of restrictiveness that's available, and related services being the least restrictive of all, where students are just general ed and they get related services. That's not there, and what you'll see is like in the elementary, we've tried to identify what is being used in each building. And so the elementary, as you flow, Country Parkway is across the top, then Dodge, then Forest, then Heim, then Maple East, and then Maple West. And where you start to see gaps, that's where you start to see that there's inconsistency. So for instance, at Country Parkway, they have a strong consultant teacher program that they use. And they have some integrated co-teaching, but if you go to other buildings, they have a complete reliance on integrated co-teaching, but they do not utilize consultant teaching. In some places, what we found is that some schools, it may be called consultant teaching, but the kids end up in a co-teaching model anyways, where the teacher stays in the room the entire time. So nomenclature labels matter because they are meaningful about levels of need that kids have and levels of service that will be provided. So when you go across and you will see, like some schools will have resource room for kids based on need, other schools won't have it. You'll also notice that Country Parkway has no 15-to-1 programming at all, where the other schools, there's 15-to-1 small group. 15-to-1 is a small group setting outside of the general education classroom for academic instruction. So as you move to the right, it becomes more restrictive and you are leaving general education, receiving more and more supports. When you move to resource room and to the right, that is out of the classroom. So what you'd like to see is more consistency. There will be varied needs by kids in buildings, and therefore the programs won't necessarily look exactly the same. However, it's difficult to believe that kids across the district are of such divergent needs, and in some buildings they require the service, but in other buildings they do not. When you look at the middle level, you'll notice that all the schools use integrated co-teaching grades 5 to 8. They also have 15-to-1 pull-out classes for math and ELA in 5th to 7th grade. In 8th grade, they have them for math. They do not have them for English. And so there's a question is, if they needed 15 to 1 in 7th grade for literacy, why don't they need them in 8th grade for literacy? You know, and the old, and, you know, it was kind of told to us, well, we have to get ready for the high school because they don't have 15 to 1 at the high school, so we have to get them ready. And that's the opposite of what you're trying to do in special ed, is you determine what the need is and provide service to match the need. You don't tell the kids to change their need to fit the services available in a building. And you will notice that there is no 15 to 1 at the high school level. There are no specialized classes for students with a disciplinary basis at the high school level. When you get into further to the right, which are smaller settings, more restrictive in students with higher needs, you know, at the elementary level, you'll have a behavioral class for an 8 to 1 behavioral class at Forest Elementary. You'll also have 15 to 1 full day self-contained for kids K1, 2, 3, 4 at Dodge. And you'll also have autistic settings for students at Maple East. You have approximately, if I get my numbers correct, there's approximately 30 students at the elementary, but they funnel into 2 classes. Like for autistic students, they funnel into 2 classes at Heim, 1 for 5-6, 1 for 7-8. Behavioral classes are currently only exist at Casey Middle School in 7-8. They're being phased out. And again, the question remains, if students need behavioral 8-1-1 in elementary, but they don't need them in middle school, it's just raised a question like, what's going on? It seems counterintuitive to us. Sorry about that. One of the things we do know that there's an autistic class at Heim, but there is no class like that at the high school. And so the students, then the question is, if you're an autistic student at Heim and you're in 8th grade, what happens in 9th grade? You know, and at this point, there is no district placement. Outside placements are difficult. And some students, it's reported that some students are being put on home teaching because there is no place for them. And that's not what you're trying to do as a district. That's not what the kind of service you want to provide. And for those students, their experience is very different than other students. And so the challenge for parents, of course, is rich in the elementary, but weaning its way off and diminishing as you move through the system. As a parent, it can become very challenging to come to expect a level of service and then find out as your kids move along that they've got to fit into this is what we got. And you got to fit into it, as opposed to, do we have a continuum of services that meets the needs of our kids? You know, and try, listen, from experience, it's challenging to maintain the level of services that all parents want. There is some economy of scale that needs to be had. And it's not possible to meet every need in district, but by studying carefully the needs of the kids in a comprehensive sense, a continuum of services can be established and accommodations and modifications made to it by watching the needs of the kids and predicting their transfer forward. I should probably get this thing taken away from me because I'm clearly I don't.
Yep, we want 11 now.
Have this whole Italian talk with my hand thing. So.
And that's Lynn and I at 11.
There you go.
Hello, welcome. To what extent does the district special education program follow accepted best practices? That was one of the things we had looked at. The district's continuum of services, which is one of the things that Tony was explaining to you about the continuum. The in-district continuum of services for students is undefined, we're finding, incomplete and not clearly understood by many of the district staff and parents. The district's continuum of service we found was a bit unbalanced, which has been explained by Tony also. Heavy at the elementary level and reduced at the secondary level.
There also is an over-reliance on the self-contained settings for standard assessed students with disabilities. We found that, especially at the high school, the students are either regents or alternately assessed. There's no in between. So we heard from parents, we heard from staff that there needs to be pathways developed for those students in between, those students who are in what we call the gray area, low average IQ, they're now being forced into a life skills class with students with lower IQs and different needs. So this is concerning to not only parents that we talk to, but staff. So there needs to be a continuum to address those students and not just this or that, as what was explained.
I guess
Sure, go right ahead.
I've been nodding along vigorously as you've been saying. This is unfortunately not surprising to me. My question is, and this is a broad question, I don't know if there's the magic bullet. How do you fix that?
Questions? Mr. Bueling, if you don't mind, if we can get
Sure.
through because there's only 4 more slides and hold questions to the end, because I think if we start with questions, we may not get through. So if we can just finish it and we have 4 more slides to go. All right.
Absolutely. Yep. So, high need students as well. Teachers lack access to district employed behavioral specialists, as Tony indicated, that 811 group, it ends at middle school. There's no continuum for the high school. So teachers and parents are saying, we need a behavioral specialist. We know that you have one contracted for some hours. However, a district this size really needs to look at a full-time behavioral specialist. And we'll get into that a little further. And in essence of time, I'm going to move along.
So just a quick point. I think it's important to know that the continuum, when we talk to staff members in every building and ask, what is the general profile? There's no exact profile, but what's the general profile of a student that would best be served in the 811 behavioral, the 811 autistic, the 15-to-1 academic? And the answer was, we don't really know. We used to have an idea, but it's kind of gotten muddied. We would really like, so what does that profile look like? What are the characteristics? What is the curriculum of that program? What are the assessment practices? What's the evidence that kids are being successful in those settings? Those are important pieces that need to be commonly held to the greatest extent possible so that teachers, who are the frontline conversation pieces with parents, can provide the right information and the right guidance. And sometimes, what people are telling us, the staff are telling us that they're unsure and that their definition is different, they think, than others, and they're hesitant to make recommendations because they're not totally certain what's available. And then sometimes claiming that some parents may know decision-making about programming prior to staff in some cases. So those are pieces that I think in this process, this lack of holes in the continuum and lack of understanding about what is and isn't there are 2 root causes, I believe, of some issues that may exist in the district.
So looking at communication and leadership, we found that there are not enough district administrators to effectively guide your program. You have, at this point in time, 3 special education coordinators to manage the program. Directors, okay, excuse me. Directors to manage the program, 1 at the elementary, 1 at the middle, 1 at the high school. And then there's the preschool level, which has kind of gotten forgotten. Rule of thumb is 1 coordinator for every 3,500 district students or director, and 1 director for every 400 special education students. So a district this size is seriously lacking in that leadership. We found that district education directors are not present and visible in the buildings. They're not able to maintain the contact with students and teachers and the programs because they're overwhelmed with meetings and other responsibilities. Clerical support was insufficient. We found that it was insufficient to support the program leadership because they're bound up with clerical processes, and the director's ability to be visible in the buildings and in touch with the program is compromised by doing clerical work. Districts this size, and many districts that are smaller than this district, have a dedicated secretary to CPSE because that's a full-time job. That's a job that doesn't even appear on your radar in most cases. So you don't have 1 person dedicated at this point to CPSE. So you have a person that's a little here, a little there, a little everywhere. So that's taking away from your directors because they're now forced to do some of that clerical work. And is that really a good use of your leadership money?
Right.
There
If I
is,
could just
yeah.
pop in, just to illustrate. In my district where I worked for a long time, Sweet Home, we had about 400 identified students. We had a director of special education. We also had an instructional support specialist for special education who assisted. So you had 2 people in a leadership role for 400 students. Here you have 1,200. At that ratio, you would have 6 people. Here you have 3 directors, and you have Mr. Scanzuzzo in the role of the assistant superintendent, but his duties go beyond special education to include many other topics besides. So it really makes it challenging for those directors to fulfill all the duties that they have to take on. And an important duty is getting out into the buildings to get into classrooms, watch instruction, talk to teachers, and understand what is going on in those placements that they're putting kids into. And that is one of the big pieces they're losing because they are so inundated with meetings.
Exactly. And no, you're right, Tony, because in my district, when I was with Orchard Park, I was a director, I had an assistant director, and I had a dedicated TOSA to do CPSE. So, and we only had 700 classified students. So there's your ratio right there. It also impacts the lack of communication between district office and the building staff. If you can't get out in the building, that communication isn't there. So the varied members of the district education team, as well as the teachers, consistently reported lack of administrative presence in the building, as we said before, and that communication. Staff did report multiple attempts at communicating, phone calls and emails, but not getting a response. Is that the fault of your directors? Not necessarily. If their hands are tied with other duties, you can't always get back to an email here or there or a phone call. So it's looking at your district and how you're using your leadership and how you're deploying it successfully. Janet, you're next.
Slide. Our slide person now. Are the leadership functions of the special education department sufficiently staffed, which we've talked about, communication and leadership? Parents are generally satisfied with the communication they receive from their child's school. Teachers, but are generally dissatisfied with the amount and clarity of information they receive from the district office, which is an extension of what Lynn was talking about. While some parents offer high levels of satisfaction with the CSE process, twice as many offered a lower score when we were asked on a 1 to 5 how they felt about their meetings and the CSE process. While some would like more proactive communication rather than having to ask for it, parents feel their children's teachers work hard for their kids and for parents. Significant number of parents demonstrated frustration with the communication they received from the district office. Again, as Lynn spoke about, that their questions are not answered or they are not authentically listened to. Parents of students are frustrated. Many conversations of the holes that exist in the district's continuum, which we covered in previous slides, without any substance attempts to remedy them. Those were the feelings that were given to us through the interviews. Parents feel that they are left out on their own to figure out the programs and what they and their children are entitled to. Little support in the process. Teachers and administrators do not believe the district office has a shared understanding of what the mission, the vision, and beliefs that guide the work of special education in the district. Teachers regularly reported that there is no shared understanding of a general student profile of needs, instructional strategies, measures of effectiveness for each service in the continuum. So as students are moving from elementary to middle to high school, also as they're moving from class to class, many teachers reported to us they felt they weren't being given that information that they needed. There has been little professional development. That was one of the key pieces that came out. Conversation or communication around expectations for practice of general and special educators in the integrated co-teaching setting. That does require staff training. That requires those teams to know what the expectations are, what their roles are. Many of them felt, we've worked together for years, we've got this, but often said to us, we really would love some serious training to show us the true points of integrated co-teaching. There were few opportunities for professional development for special education needs during the instructional day or as part of the superintendent's conference day. Again, training for the staff, training for the aides that are within the buildings, the aides that are supporting these classrooms. Many felt that they're hired, they're brought in, it's kind of work on the job. They really would love to see some training. Lacking consistent contact with the schools and programs, decisions are made locally in schools, which really does result in the buildings working as silos. And that was one of the pieces that came out to us. Every building said, we feel we're working our hardest. We did a lot of the high school, Lynn and I. My teachers are great, my administration, we are doing our darndest. But we're here, and the other building's here, and the other building's here. We would love to see more of a collaborative between the high schools.
So that's kind of a summary of our findings at this point. So in terms of recommendations, the recommendations we offer, first of all, are simply that. They're recommendations. They're not in any way edicts or dictums. They're like, here's some things that we're thinking about for you to consider. We don't offer them in the form of a timeline. We offer them in the form of phases. Take these on first, and then when you're done with these, now you can move on to these. We don't want to do a set artificial timelines. It's more important to do it well and get it done properly than it is to rush and get it just to get it done and then have to undo it or redo it. So they're also, the recommendations are based on goals in each phase. What should you try to accomplish? So in the first phase, we would recommend that communication amongst all special education stakeholders, that be improved in quantity and quality. Parents, teachers, administrators, building level, district level, find a vehicle to start creating shared understanding of what is it. You know, one of the things our questions was, what are the core beliefs of the special education program in the Williamsville schools? And the answer we most often got is, we're not really sure. It looks different in every building. So we're creating a shared sense of mission, vision, and belief. Those are key leadership attributes in any strong organization. Having those conversations would be powerful. Constructing a district continuum of services that meets the needs of the kids and is based on a shared understanding of what each aspect of that continuum is designed to do and the measures of its success. And then to provide immediate resources to meet areas of immediate needs quickly. Places where there are clear gaps, to attend to those. In phase two, you know, part of phase one is building an action plan to do all that. Phase two is implementing the action plan. Plan, then do. But make sure your plan is thoughtful, and that's why having conversations around what do we believe, what's our purpose, what's the vision, are critical, because they become the filter in every conversation that occurs, regardless of who's in the conversation. Establishing processes, staff training, and personnel, and making necessary personnel shifts where needed to create a stronger continuum of service. And then when that's done, because special education was the focus for this, we recommend attending to those pieces. But when that's done, intervention, art, response intervention, academic intervention are critical pieces in this, but that of itself is a very large task, and it's challenging to create a good intervention system, even more so in a district this size. It would be best not to try to do them at the same time, because focus on too much is focus on nothing. So we recommend waiting until that piece is complete. In phase one, and we'll work through these quickly, we believe that the district needs what we call an executive director of special education. Someone, a director status, someone administratively certified that is the overseer and the director of the directors. Someone whose only job is special education, not safety, McKinney-Vento, student support services, but someone that requires an expertise in knowledge of high quality special education practice.
We talked about ensuring a pragmatic compliance to the district mission, vision, and beliefs. We also talked about, because we want to make sure that the Part 2 regulations are being followed through the district. Lead the work of the coordinators and CSE chairs to ensure consistency and understanding of the decision-making process around that continuum, so that all buildings, all people that are running the meetings are sure of what the endpoint is. So everybody's agreeing on what those classifications are, what those placements should be. We did talk about a full year strategic planning process to construct that action plan, as Tony mentioned, that begins with that mission. We would like to see district leaders collaborating with outside facilitators to facilitate a shared decision-making process to seek and utilize meaningful stakeholders' input to build community support for final outcomes. We feel that that's a very important key. Mission, vision, beliefs serve as a rubric for all future decision-making. Did you have anything to add?
So what we're looking at is a systematic approach, taking a look at the entire continuum of services first and foremost. What do our students need? Take and project everything that the students need, and then begin to construct your continuum of service. Don't take your staffing and say, you have this teacher, this teacher, this teacher in your building. Now go ahead and fill your classes. That's not how it works in special ed. We need to look at students first and foremost. So taking a systematic approach in adhering to the completed mission, the vision and beliefs, and construct a matrix of the student needs, as I said, the supports and measures and the effectiveness of each option that the New York State continuum offers. On the continuum, you have a consultant teacher as the least restrictive, and you go all the way up to your special classes. Every district is expected to have a continuum like that. The only thing that's an option is integrated co-teach. A district does not have to subscribe to it. It's a great thing, but it's expensive. So take a look at your continuum and make sure you have all the stakeholders involved in that planning. It shouldn't just be one person. It should be a group of people strategizing and taking a look at where are we now and where do we need to be. So utilize that planning team and make those necessary changes to the district program and build an action plan for the implementation for the success of your students.
One of our recommendations is to initiate 2 half-day meetings of special education staff, teachers, related service providers. They are a key piece to all of this as part of the superintendent's conference day. Meeting time includes time for general meetings and position-specific meetings. Build conversations and collaboration amongst all special educators to foster greater program consistency K through 12. Allow for staff input and questions around district programs. Provide opportunities for professional development of staff in topics of importance and need. We also have suggested 2 half-day training opportunities for district special ed teacher aides as part of the superintendent's conference day. And that was one of the things that we talked about, getting the feedback, actually giving them formal training as to their roles within the classroom.
You know, in your continuum right now, you're lacking 15-to-1 services for kids at the high school, and you lack an 811 autistic piece. The challenge is here in July, to think that you can have those programs ready by September would be a mistake to try and do it. So we recommend that you spend time to adequately plan and prepare for the creation of those opportunities in the continuum, with the assumption that your strategic planning process would identify them as in-district options that you'd want to keep. What you can do in the meantime is go out and use the funds that are available in the budget to try to hire a board-certified behavioral analyst, a behavioral specialist, someone who's not working for 4 districts, but who works for Williamsville. And it, and that's a conversation you have to have with the associations about whether it's an outside provider that's got a one contract with the district, or if there's some sort of employee, but someone that can support, many districts your size, you might have two. My suggestion is to start with one that can really assist the teachers and the kids to try and overcome some of the behavioral issues that impact their learning.
And Tony, if I could just step
jump
in.
right in.
My experience with Orchard Park, because I did start with contracting with BOCES for a behavioral specialist, and I found that it wasn't enough. It was expensive too. So I went out and I hired one behavioral specialist. It wasn't enough. I ended up, before I retired, hiring two. So at this point in time, they have two full-time behavioral specialists, one that works with the elementary and one that works with the secondary. And to be honest with you, it's still not enough. But it is difficult to find that person out there. But I highly suggest that you hire your own as opposed to contracting, because then they have a vested interest in the district. And you'll be surprised at how many people will want to tap into that person's experience.
So when that's done, then move to phase two. I would implement that 15-1. There are kids at the high school level that need. I would ask you to encourage you to really be thoughtful about 15-1. It's a restrictive program and it takes kids out of general ed. I will tell you that as a team, we're dubious of kids going immediately into kindergarten into a 15-1 before they've had any instruction or an opportunity to respond to instruction. A decision is made to place them into a restrictive setting. Some kids need to go immediately into it, but we're thoughtful. We'd have to be thoughtful about that. But at the high school level, there are kids that will need that as a vehicle to try and reach Regents exams that are required for Regents diploma. Your kids graduate, especially kids graduate in pretty good shape with a diploma. Their Regents diploma rate lags. Begin to put in your 8-to-1 autistic program, and you're going to have to require where will it be, who are the teachers, who are the staff, what's the impact on related service providers, because those are factors when you open up those opportunities. We'd encourage you to hire an additional director for special education, to create 4, and maintain the current TOSA as an instruction. You have instructional specialists for content areas. Maintain that person as an opportunity to provide training and support for special educators and general educators across the district. To create more directors, but you would have an executive director, 4 directors, and a TOSA. That would give you 6 leadership positions, which was pretty ratio-based, congruence with other districts of this size. And at that point then, with those pieces in place, you could then begin to take a look at intervention and creating a more systemic approach to that. All of this, sitting in Dr. Brown Hall's chair for a long time, I know that, you can't just keep writing checks. And so there's a thoughtfulness to how we use our grant funding. Section 611 and 619 are federal funds for special education. Oftentimes they're used as vehicles to pay for outside placements or related service providers, but be thoughtful about what is going on there. Your consolidated application, federal funds in total 1, 2, and 4 can be potentially an issue. You may look for an opportunity to use fund balance if necessary as a vehicle to help fund it. It can't be done ad nauseum, or else you can create severe financial issues. But the fund balance is there for important areas of high need. It may be worth consideration. And the other thing, maybe more importantly, is maybe a real look at what is our program, where do we have our staff currently, and do we need to put our staff into different places? Do we need to reallocate staff in different fashions? So I don't have, these are not easy questions and not easy answers. But if you talk about how do we start to move the district's programming and take this good system and begin to make it good for all and then great for all, it'll take some strategic planning. It isn't just going to be piecemeal, do some things and open up some rooms. It's going to mean leadership. It's going to require thoughtfulness. It's going to require vision, and then the moxie to hang with it, communicate, and make people believe in it. If you get that, you can get something really special for your kids, something even more special than what you have. So that's kind of I'm sorry it took so long, but it was a big project, and we appreciate your attention and your thoughtfulness, and we'll answer any questions that you might have.
Well, we want to thank you first, and then we'll open up to, thank you very much. That was a lot of work, and we know it, and we appreciate it. The community appreciates, the parents appreciate it. So thank you very much for coming here and spending time presenting it to us also. Now, if board members want to ask questions, I'll turn it over to Dr. Singh and the board.
Do you have any questions?
I do, yeah. Now, I know you can't give us a timeline specifically, but when working with other districts, what was like some sample timeline for your phase 1 implementation and phase 2 implementation? Does it take 6 months to a year for phase 1 for some of these?
If you were to ask me a guess, like identifying and hiring an executive director who can really take all of this on and lead it might be the first step. There's a process to that. And then after that, you can do, it depends on what structures you already have in place, but you can probably get to phase 1 and be ready by September of next year to begin to implement some things.
And what about with like a full continuum services? How long is something like that?
It's really a long-range plan that
Yeah.
you need to put into action. I mean, I would suggest that you have like a 5-year plan as to, maybe the first 2 years, you're phase 1, and then, maybe halfway through that second year or into the third, move into your phase 2. But when you're planning for an 811 or any sort of a new classroom or a new option, you have to really look at the future. You can't plan for a class today and say, we're going to have an 811, and then there's no continuum after that. You have to look long range, and people have to be trained. You just can't, because they're a special ed teacher, doesn't necessarily mean they have the training to work with autistic students, to work with the behavioral students. So you have to have an opportunity to look at who's going to best staff that program and what training do they need to implement. And then look at curriculum. What type of curriculum is that student body going to need?
The implementation can be smooth. If the continuum that's arrived at is akin to what you already have, it's a smoother transition. If you decide to make shifts and have less reliance on integrated co-teaching and more on consultant teaching, I would recommend doing that in phases, because there'll be people with a built-in expectation. It'll be very hard, and it'd be better to start at the elementary and move it through rather than try to change people's beliefs and expectation overnight. That's the thoughtfulness of the process. And that's why it really demands somebody in that role with knowledge of continuums, understanding of all the regulations, laws of the state and federal government, Part 200 New York State regulations, and then also pretty good leader to pull it all together.
As you know, we have a lot of current needs, and I know a lot of the parents are excited about these various phases to be implemented. So thank you.
Can I just piggyback on what board member Bluckinger asked, because the consultants, sorry to call you consultants, Tony, Lynn, Janet. One of the things they said was to develop that stakeholder group, right? We're in the process of doing that. We have our SEAC form. The only piece that's missing right now from the advisory committee is for the president to appoint. We are gonna have board members sitting on it also. That's the only thing missing. And so when Tony speaks about the special education strategic plan, that's something the SEAC's going to have to develop, and then we can assign timelines to that after we look at what the strategic plan looks like. So the first meeting of the advisory committee for special ed is slated for August 14th, and Tony has agreed to be there to also speak to the advisory committee and then give us some leading steps with what our work is going to be.
Awesome.
I believe Mr. Blunt had a
Yeah, I have like 7,000 questions, but I'll keep them real brief for everyone here. First of all, thank you. I think you guys did a really thorough and truthful job, which I was concerned about. Who should sit on the strategic planning? What are the stakeholders, in your opinion? Who are the stakeholders that need to be there without question?
Everybody that's impacted by special education.
So parents,
special education teachers,
Mhm.
general education teachers, school psychologists, building administrators, district administrators.
Some related service people.
Related service
Yeah.
folks like speech pathologists, OT/PT, where appropriate, if appropriate, an arm of students that have experienced the program.
Right.
Or finding a meaningful way for them to participate. They may not be in the committee itself, but how could they inform the committee? Almost like a group, an informing group.
Right.
They're the ones that know it best. They're the ones that went through the program.
I guess my second question is, I speak as a special ed parent. We want change immediately to help our kids. What are the first things that we can hit the ground? I know we need a strategic plan, but what are the first things that we can do to help fix this September 8th? I mean, I know that's a very hard question, but that my phone every day, how are you going to help my son? How are you going to help my daughter? And that's what we're here for. How do we do that?
Here's what I would say. Improving communication, the ability to not just deliver, but receive.
Right.
That two-way communication would be a first step. So first of all, if you were to ask, and this is just a thought off the top of my head, finding the right person that can serve in a leadership, that leadership role, create the position and find the right person, that would be a step, right? And then immediately start scheduling times and opportunities for special education staff to have regular opportunities to get together and talk, and provide a mechanism to get the directors into buildings to observe and practice. Communication seems to be, like all things, it's hard. Communication is the essence of leadership. It's the essence of any strong organization, but in a district this big, it's the hardest part. So those pieces, parents and staff that they've been authentically heard would be a good first step.
From my perspective, as a former director of special education, I would take a look at what do you have right now? What do you have to offer now? What are the student needs? What are the staff that you have? And develop, it may not be a full continuum, but develop a continuum that can better meet a larger majority of students, instead of trying to pigeonhole students into this box and this box and this box.
That's going to
Look at your projections.
That is going to be
and it's not going to be
correct.
perfect, because we're making a lot of recommendations that you have to take a look at. But what I would normally do is spread out my whole group of students and start looking where the majority of needs are and where my staff is, and make those allocations and at least start there.
I'm sorry, that won't be ready by September 8th.
No, that won't. And I don't want to, and I know you've gotten a lot of feedback, and I don't want to take away from the great work that, as you said, our directors are, right, for a district this size.
Correct.
I don't want to take away from the great work that they have done,
Yeah,
right? I don't want to
absolutely.
take away from that,
Yes.
but there is, and I've heard it many times when I got here, right? We're Williamsville. And with that in mind, we want to see where we can take that. So I appreciate that, how to go from good to great. That's what we want to do with this. But the September 8th, that is going to be
No, I know.
difficult. I know you know. But the key piece there is what you mentioned about the stakeholders on the advisory committee. That's what we have. We'll look at the related services piece, but we do have parents on the committee. We have teachers. We have administrators, district office administrators. We'll do board members. We'll look at the related services also. But then talking, as you said, you didn't have time to talk to students about how they experience our special education programming,
Right.
but that's another area of focus that we can definitely have.
Yeah, and just let me add, excuse me, but when we talked about looking at class sizes, some of your classes, the numbers are very low. So we're not always saying you've got to hire more people.
Right.
Also look at what you have. It's a possibility there could be some reallocation
Right.
of teachers and combining of classrooms. So a 15-to-1 now doesn't have 7,
Right.
so I mean, that's a recommendation that I would give if you look at that.
And that's what I was alluding to. Take a look at what you have
Yep.
and your class sizes and see.
And you may be able to use the resources you have now, at least to start with.
Right. I have another question. I have like 8,000, like I said, but I think looking back is important as we try to move forward. How do you think, from what you've learned, the district got so discombobulated in the communication piece between everybody? Like, all the people seem to be sort of lost. I know the teachers work really, really hard. In our experience, almost everyone I've ever talked to, the teachers are working extremely hard. And it's where do you think the chain got broken?
I don't mean to obfuscate, but to speculate on that would be, we don't know. It is, and I can't speculate, because to speculate would try to assign.
But I will. I will.
Good.
Because one of the areas I know that the district has prided itself on is keeping district office thin. That's one of the things the district has prided itself on. But when you do that, it comes at an expense.
Right.
And we're seeing that, right? So we have directors who are stretched very thin,
Right.
aren't able to get into the buildings. Communication suffers. When you start prioritizing what happens in a day, I come into work every day as the leadership team does, and when we pull into that parking lot, we have great ideas on what's going to happen,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
It happens with our directors also.
Sure.
And so you have to prioritize, right? Gardening in the minefield, Laurel Schmick's book, right? And that's what happens. So when you don't have enough people, unfortunately, some communication does suffer, but we are going to correct that.
And I have one last one, and I'll be quiet for a moment. And as a follow-up, how do you prevent that breaking the chain? Is it just adding more people? Is it being more open? Is it not making people fit into certain boxes for the district need? What do you think that is?
All of the above.
Yeah.
It's all of the above. There's no.
Communication.
I'm
Strong
not-
communication.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just bodies, it's procedures and protocols that
Mhm.
are well-known and consistently followed.
And which we lack at this moment.
Just a couple questions. At first, it was very thorough, and I appreciate it. I'm sure we all do. Identifying needs that, personally, I think have been too long coming. There were 2 specific classrooms mentioned in the phases that you recommended, but there were 5 gaps, such as like the grade 12 or the ICT in grade 12, behavioral 811, and it was the middle school. Why were they left off, I guess? Is that
Well, the question is,
difficult
there
to?
seems to be, do we need a behavioral class? At Forest, where we have reports of kids in kindergarten out by first grade. Our experience is students in behavioral classes, they don't become better in a year.
No.
Their needs are so strong. So whether phasing at one level, phasing out at one level, maintaining, the first question is that part of the continuum that you really need? Or can those students, to what extent do you need that? So some of those were based on whether or not they should be maintained. A 15-to-1 academic piece at the high school is probably something that is absolutely needed to support kids with reasons. You have an autistic continuum through middle school that just stops. The alternatives for kids are finding outside. I think it's ethically inappropriate to host a student for 9 years and then tell them they have to go get their education somewhere else.
Yeah.
I think that piece needs to be correct.
Your recommendations were based more on what you definitely need rather than
Well,
what
it's
we
like
might.
those layers, these are absolutely
Critical,
These need to
right.
be evaluated.
That's understood. That makes sense. And then if there was like an 811 autistic class in the high school, do those tend to be Regents tracks or because I know the school district I teach at, they're Regents track, but I don't know what your recommendations
It depends
were.
on the needs of the autistic students in that class. Obviously, autism is an umbrella.
Yes, right.
And so there are many layers of the onion that you peel. So it really depends on the cohort that you put together. You're not going to put a student with Asperger's in with a severely autistic student. So it depends on what the makeup of the class is. But if it's your higher functioning autism students, they should be earning a local diploma or a Regents diploma or following one of the many pathways that are available for students. And they shouldn't just be classified and alternatively assessed.
And again, that goes back to the communication piece where there's set,
Right.
Exactly.
framework that people, parents, and families can understand and know what they're getting into.
Right.
That makes sense. And my only last question, and I apologize, I know other board members had questions. The behavior specialist, going back to that, over the last year, we've heard a lot of that from parents coming in to speak with us. Is that one of those things that is easier to be implemented even halfway through this year? Or I know it's different with the budget. I know that, but
No, because we
I
had
know
the
you
money.
mentioned.
You remember in the budget, we had the money allocated.
I was going to
Then
ask.
Assistant Superintendent Zuzo, we've already secured 2. I know we're working on the 3rd, right? We're working on the 2nd one to finalize that.
That was going to be my question. Is that we're making sure we're allocating that money correct?
Yes, we already have it allocated in the budget. We have to.
The
Awesome.
difficult thing is
It's
finding
finding an
the
appropriate.
appropriate
Yeah,
person.
I understand that. And I'd rather.
Hard to find.
Yes,
They're
very
very hard to find.
They don't grow on trees.
A single board member, like, I can only say, I'd rather you guys take your time with it and
Mhm.
find the right person than rush and just say we have it for families. That's not the right way to do it either. So I
I think that's
appreciate
the right
that.
approach to just about everything in this.
Yes.
Avoid the desire to quickly
Yeah.
fix,
Right.
but to do it well.
I agree.
With a sense of urgency.
Thank you.
Awesome question. Thank you. I had a parent send me a few questions. I know it's difficult to get the context from a written question from a parent, and I'm gonna say what she wrote. Slide 2 listed questions the review aimed to answer. Quote, do the services we provide meet the needs of the identified students in our district? And how is our district aligned with best practices? Are the gaps identified on slide 10 gaps in best practices, gaps that need to be filled in order to meet the needs of our identified students, or both?
The continuum is not meeting the needs of your kids, and the practices in place to identify and determine what continuum to offer, what services to offer, and whether or not they meet the needs of the kids, those are in need of redefinition. So it's really a combination of the two.
And then one last question for the committee. When looking at the needs of identified students, were the needs of the students currently in outside placements taken into account?
I will tell you that in the course of our work, we really got, we didn't spend as much time on outside placements as we spent on inside. That's probably another step in the process. We looked at and examined, you have approximately 97 students that are being serviced in outside placements. It's
Wow.
a, 97.
That seemed-
1,200, it's not it's not incongruent to other districts. It's hard for us to really know, like looking at the list of where the kids are placed. Those are services offered that are generally of an intensity of need not normally found inside the K-12 buildings. So we didn't find anything on a quick look at outside placements that was out of the ordinary, but that is a place where a committee could spend more time. We spend more time within the district.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I said it's a question for Dr. Brownhall. I know you mentioned that, and the committee. I know you mentioned that you're going to bring this to your focus group or your.
It's a special education advisory committee that's been formed this year. We knew that when we got the results from the review that we're going to have to enact, right, and actualize some of these recommendations, best practices. And so the best way to do that is with the stakeholder group. So the Special Education Advisory Committee, I spoke to the board about it before it was formed, and we contacted, the teachers union to get representation, SEPSA to get representation, directors to get representation of central office, principals will be sitting on the panel just so that we have a true stakeholders group. So it would be mindless to have a stakeholder group and then us as a district still say this is what we're going to do, right? So it's really to get everyone's eyes wrapped around that and then begin to actualize what this will look like.
To further that, because I've heard from parents who are looking for, and I agree, we should, do more of a community forum, not just with that group, but with other parents who aren't on that group, who may want to attend in person, allow them to ask questions. I don't know what format you could do it. Do it by Zoom, have those people who aren't on the committee attend via Zoom, be able to ask questions. But, the committee worked on this for months. The parents have had days to review it. There's going to be additional information, I understand, you're going to give to the superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to bring that to the stakeholders. I think the everyday parents that I hear from, Stuart, Michael, we all hear from, they have questions. And I think we owe it to them to have some kind of forum where they can attend, ask questions, have their voice heard. Do you plan on doing that? Is there a plan on doing
I'll
that?
explain to you why I don't plan on doing that. Because all that would do, that would not be of any benefit at this point in time.
Well, not at this point in time, not to interrupt, but
No, go ahead.
it's because, we had this year-long review. I know we can do some things.
Months.
And I think, having a plan is great. The parents want to see a plan, but allowing the parents at some point, not today, not maybe at the August meeting, but some point down the line, sooner rather than later, they can attend, have their voices heard, ask questions live, with so they can get an answer. Because it's hard to get, the context of all this information that the, like I said, the everyday parents who live this every day have received. They want to deep dive into this, and I think we owe it to them. What could be the harm? I think what this group did is wonderful, to examine this warts and all, and we owe it to the stakeholders, the everyday parents, to let them attend some kind of forum, again, in person or virtually, to hear what's going on and have their questions answered.
And I guess I'll push that a little bit further, right? So when we have the meeting of the advisory committee and we begin the work, we'll see at what point that might be beneficial, if at all, right? When we already have the recommendations and we have to develop a timeline on when we're going to enact these recommendations, we have the PowerPoint, we'll have a 64-page report, right? We'll have to really see, or we might do a mechanism or a vehicle where they're able to submit questions, but having an open forum, not sure that would be the best way, but let me think about it.
Dr. Brownhall, may I tend to agree. I think we do need, if we're going to enact, I guess for lack of a better word, reform or change, it's important to have buy-in from everyone, the stakeholders. And if the parents are clearly an important stakeholder group,
That's why they're on the committee, correct?
that their voice is heard. Because in the end, we answer to them. And to leave them not in the dark, but outside the process would be a mistake. I agree. I think we need to have the parents' voice. And I'm not sure the public forum is
Some method.
there has to be some method where they feel that they're getting a buy-in, because without it, this won't matter.
No. And I'm just trying to always push back, right? Only because the buy-in came in when we interviewed 27 parents and got their feedback. The buy-in comes in when we have parents on the Special Education Advisory Committee, right? So I'm not sure that having a forum would be additional buy-in. But again, I want to definitely mull that over. I'm not sure that that's the best way to seek buy-in when we wanted to make sure from the ground up we had the parents being a part of that review. Their voices are heard. Board Member Kism, I'm sorry, I'm calling. That's your spot.
Thank you. I appreciate the thorough review, first of all, and I like the suggestion to look at this very strategically, and sounds like really implement a strategic planning process specifically for special education, which I appreciate. And I know I was involved in strategic planning for the district, first as a parent and then as a board member. And so I'm wondering, Dr. Brownhall, in terms of looking at this as a strategic planning process, are there ways that we can get input from people other than those people that are serving on the committee?
Well, and I hear what you're saying, but I'm trying to understand or wrap my head around what additional input would we need, right? That they haven't already, that parents 27 haven't already supplied, that we contacted SEPSA, working through SEPSA, and I know SEPSA is the vehicle for special education parent voice in the district, right? We have SEPSA representatives on there. Would it then be beneficial for the representatives that serve on the CPAC that are members of SEPSA to then go back and solicit the feedback from the SEPSA parents to add to greater voice? So when you sit on the committee, you're not sitting on the committee as yourself, right? So when a board member sits on the committee, they sit on the committee as a board member. They come back, inform board members, have discussions with board members, what I can bring to the committee. When you sit as a parent on the committee, you're not just sitting because of yourself. You're not myopic, right? You're going back, soliciting, go to SEPSA, say, okay, parents, I'm a voice on this committee. What are we thinking? When you're a teacher, you're going back to your teacher saying, okay, colleagues, I'm a voice on this committee. What are we thinking? Let's get some feedback, right? Directors also. So that's how I envision it, because if we did that, then we would have to do, a parent workshop, a teacher workshop. I would look for those groups that are represented on the CPAC to really be the voice of those groups and go back to their constituents and make it a two-way street that way.
I
Thank
would
you.
just
I
like,
appreciate that.
I just want to offer a couple of things. I think, we're continuously talking about communication. So to all of the really valid points that everybody's bringing up, continuously updating the community on the work of the group would be really helpful.
Absolutely.
Because we have structures in place as a very active member of SEPSA for several years. We have lots of structures in place, but people don't know what they don't know. So continuously updating the work of the group. And then I would add that just as the board, that we have a really robust agenda that we work really hard on. Representative groups need to have a running agenda item. So for example, SEPSA needs a running agenda item where their representative is updating SEPSA. Just like when I was the middle representative, I worked to get us to be a running agenda item. So those are things that need to be put in place structurally and then repeated ad nauseum so that people remember that those are the ways that the communication is flowing.
So Board Member Spicer, what I hear is possibly then on my community updates to give an update on the work of the SEAC, right?
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Ms. Poolen?
Communication, as Dr. Spicer said, that's exactly what I was going to piggyback on, is that, it is just a matter of the continuing the opportunities for two-way communication. And we have to funnel that and not just have an open forum to let people vent necessarily, but really to be very productive and focused on how we're going to provide information and get information back too, so that we do have that vehicle.
That's the one problem.
As you described, that's
That's the one problem with like an open forum, because special ed's so specific. You get, and it's so personal that I understand exactly what you're saying.
We've seen that.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
In the forum, that instead of like get a venting or a gripe session, we need better data.
Yeah.
That I understand exactly what you're saying, but there still needs to be
But
some.
the channels need
Yeah.
to be very clear. And I think Dr. Brownhall, you did a great job of explaining this is how that's going to work. And of course, as a board, we'll get those reports as well. So
And speaking of that, well, you know what? First, Janet, Lynn, Tony, thank you all very much
Thank you.
for this evening. I mean, again, great work. We appreciate it. And Tony, we look forward to having you at the August 14th meeting also. So I would just like to give them a round of applause for their work they did. Thank you very much. Speaking of the board reports, though, that just reminded me that you will need to work, board members will need to work with President Singh to be identified if you are interested in serving on that SEAC. All right.
Thank you. Are we going to continue with the superintendent's report?
No, we can go back to 17 now.
Okay, agenda 17, other matters, consent agenda approval. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda items 18 personnel, 19 business, 20 special needs, and student activities as presented? Poolen? Mr. Manna? Any discussion? All in favor? Consent agenda items 18 through 20 approved unanimously. At this point, I would like to congratulate the newly appointed Director of Student Services, Denise Stappenbeck.
Yes, she is here. Dr. Stappenbeck is here.
Thank you. I am excited and honored to be here and to be joining the Williamsville community. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to continue my 23-year career in education in a role that I am so incredibly passionate about. I look forward to working with you and the staff, faculty, administration, and the district at large in support of the Williamsville students. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I would also like to thank the following retiree for his service to the district, Carrie Pitts from the Facilities Department for 12 years of service. Agenda item 21, minutes. Uh, Approve the minutes of the regular board meeting held on June 13, 2023. Is there a motion to approve the June 13th regular board meeting minutes? Dr. Lippman, Ms. Poland? Are there any corrections? Any discussion? Perfect. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
No,
No,
Nope.
abstentions.
one abstention.
Oh, sorry.
I'm abstaining. I wasn't here.
My apologies. Motion carries 8-1, 801. Agenda item 22, President's Report, Meetings, Events. The upcoming event is Western New York Law Conference to be held on August 2nd, 2023. Attending from the Board of Education is Dr. Spicer, Dr. Littman, Mrs. Kasmarak Bogner. Anybody else interested?
Chicago.
Ooh, sounds like fun.
Okay.
There'll be senior staff attending also. Myself, Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo, Assistant Superintendent Balin also, and possibly
Virtual
other
component to
leadership.
that, or is it only in person?
It's only in person. I really enjoy that conference. So anybody that's available to go, I would highly encourage you to do so. This year, I just happened to be going to be with my family in Chicago that day.
It was
So
a great conference.
There's an upcoming meeting, the DEI, district-wide DEI committee. Is this the calendar committee?
That's the DEI calendar subcommittee.
Calendar subcommittee, but the date is to be determined.
It's actually, I can give you that date now. It's actually in September. It is, excuse me, one moment, colleagues. It is September 25th at 3:00 p.m.
Okay, thank you. And going to prior events, high school graduations. East High School had graduation on Saturday, June 24th at the athletic field at 9 a.m. North had on the same day at 10 a.m. And South had it at 6 p.m. at their high school. I mean, personally speaking, my daughter graduated from East, and it was touch and go with the weather. And luckily, everything was planned well, and we had a great graduation thanks to the school staff and the administration. Would any other member want to say anything about the graduations?
Well, I mentioned earlier about that, but a parent commented to me about the fact that East was at 9 and North was at 10. So that, as you face is that joint issue, I think historically they were different in the school day.
Yeah,
in the day.
They were because of last year with the weather, knowing that the closer you get to noon, the hotter it is. And at East, we had, individuals unfortunately passing out. So, so we tried to do it more in the morning as possible. And then in the evening, it's just difficult when you do them all on the same day. Next year, we are looking to do them over 2 days, though.
The next item, the U.S. Department of Education Creative, Inclusive, and Non-Discriminatory School Environments for LGBTQI+ students is June 21st. Is a virtual event, and attending is Mrs. Kasmarak Bogner. Would you like to say something on it?
It was one of these things that I saw last minute, and I decided to attend. And I found it very interesting. I think our district is doing a lot of the things that were discussed at the event. And much of the information that was shared is available in the U.S. Department of Education's website. They have an LGBTQI education toolkit available online for anyone who wants to get more information about that. Thank you.
Thank you. There was the Governor's Youth Mental Health Summit, Putting Your Mental Health First, on June 15th, in-person event. And Mrs. Pullen attended the event. Would you like to say something?
it was a very thoughtful day. Heard from a lot of different people, including Lady Gaga's mother. So it was an interesting side note to that. But it really gave us some thoughts of things to look forward to, particularly in regards to our wellness committee and how we do provide for student wellness in a really integrated format, not so much an add-on thing, but how do we as a school district really put youth mental health first? Because if youth mental health isn't there, academic achievement is not going to follow. So I think those are some important things for us to begin to unpack a little more, to learn more about. A big part was focused on social media and the effects of social media, as well as very direct social media training for youth. And we are far behind internationally how we teach our youth about the use of social media, how we model that as adults. One of the speakers talked about in Finland that they start in the primary grades to help children at that age level to begin to sort out what's fake news. So some things for us to look at. We are definitely on track with our community mental health initiative, and I think that's a really good plus for us. So we'll be anxious to see that moving forward. There's some other funding opportunities coming up down the road too. So lots of promises there, but certainly something to keep our eyes on.
Thank you. The next item is Erie County Association of School Boards. The meeting dates will be updated when we have it.
I think they just came out today.
I did upload them in board docs. They're in.
Okay.
As attachments.
Was that the email that they asked representatives from our school for different committees?
Yes.
Okay. C, membership dues for Erie County Association of School Board. Would someone like to make a motion to resolve to renew the board's membership for the Erie County Association of School Boards and authorize a payment of $9,489 for the 2023-24 annual membership dues? Ms. Pullen, any discussion?
Mr. Manna was the one who was first, and Ms. Pooling seconded, right? I think Lynn was just looking for clarification. Absolutely.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Does anyone have anything else to report under ECASB? Okay. Item D, New York State School Board Association, NISBA, a 2023 Leadership in Education event in July 28th and 29th at the Crown Plaza, Albany, between 8:30 a.m. and 5 p.m. and day 1 and 8:30 to 1:30 on day 2. Attending are Ms. Poulin, registered already. Dr. Littman?
Yeah, I'll have to think about it. I'll know in a day or two. Thank you.
Anybody else interested? The NISPA board candidate trainings. New York State law requires newly elected school board members to complete training within the first year of service. This training requires topics on essentials of school board governance and minimum of 6 hours in fiscal oversight, accountability, and fiduciary responsibilities of a school board member. District Clerk Lynn Carey will facilitate the registration for Mark Manna and Kerry Spicer for the mandatory trainings through NISPA. These online trainings are to be completed by the end of June 2024. Okay. Save the date for 2023 Annual Convention and Education Expo. This is the NISPA, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's cool. October 26th to 28th in Buffalo, New York. Does anyone have anything else to report under NISPA? No. Actually, I did have a question. Are we the members of the National School Board Association too?
No, we are not. We looked into that, and we'll be talking to the board about that at a later date, because Lynn actually contacted them to find out what the financial responsibility is for that. So we do have that information, and we'll send it out to board members.
Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, at one time, years and years ago, we were part of that, but they kept raising the cost, and the board decided, being fiscally responsible, not to join because the benefits weren't really there. At that time, things changed.
Yep. It's just, yeah, it's a matter of doing the cost benefit analysis for
Yeah.
sure.
I wonder what it costs now.
Thank you. Policy updates for personnel 6000 series. The policy committee meeting was on June 23rd. Edits will be made to the policies that were reviewed for the first reading at August 8th, 2023 regular board meeting. All policies must have first reading and then a second reading and adoption at a future board meeting. Attendees, Mrs. Blackinger, Mrs. Kasmerak-Bogner, Mrs. Poulin. Also in attendance was Dr. Brownhall and Mrs. Carey. Any comments from the policy committee or any other board members? No? Thank you. Item F, the superintendent evaluation information. The members of the 2022-23 Board of Education conducted an evaluation of the superintendent, Dr. Brownhall, in June 2023 and shared the feedback during an executive session held in June 13, 2023. Each board member participated in the evaluation process using the SuperEval platform. Evaluation was done in 6 standard areas plus annual goals and received an overall rating of highly effective. These ratings from board members were generally consistent with the superintendent's self-evaluation, which board members were able to read before completing their individual reviews. Any comments from the board? Mr. Buller.
The quick, I was not able, because of a technical glitch, I was not able to be part of that, so not all board members did that. That was the technology gods did not like me.
Maybe next time.
Maybe.
Start early.
Board self-evaluation. The members of the 2022-23 Board of Education conducted self-evaluation using SuperEval platform. The board used an evaluation in 5 standard areas. Overall, the ratings from the board members were effective. Any comments?
Thank you. I was just wanting to suggest that this year the board add a goal related to improving board governance and functioning. That is something that is recommended by NISBA and something that was discussed during our retreat. I'm happy to compose a draft goal for discussion and revision at the August 8th goal setting work session, if that's agreeable to the board.
That sounds like a good idea. Thank you. Item 23, Superintendent's report. Dr. Brownhall.
Okay. So if we can go to the community update, please, Nick. And this will be a quick community update because I wanted to make sure we got to the special education review. But now that that is over, this will still be a quick community update. I want to talk about the 2023 graduations and that they are all available on YouTube. So Williamsville East, North, and South, all of the highlights and the full ceremony. And I want to take this time to give a special thank you to Nick Filipowski and Dave Morales because they ran around to all of the high schools to make sure we got great pictures and great footage at all of the ceremonies. So thank you very much, Nick and Dave. Summer school. Monday is the first day for some of our summer school programs. It's hard to believe. Time flies. It absolutely does. So this is a summer school slide. All information is available on the summer school homepage. Special education summer school at Mill Middle School starts Monday, July 10th. Elementary and middle school will be at Casey Middle School. They start Tuesday, July 11th. And then high school summer school will be at Williamsville North. And that starts Monday also. On the next page, if you need to reach or contact any of the summer school administrators, we also provided their information on this PowerPoint slide. It's also available on the summer school homepage with summer school for special ed and high school starting Monday and elementary starting Tuesday. If you have any questions, you want to reach out to the principals immediately. Last but not least, I know board members approved this earlier in the year. I wanted to remind the board and our community and our parents that student accident insurance will be available beginning the the 23-24 school year in September. Coverage will be for students in school and students who participate in athletics. We'll have more details and information regarding the coverage that'll be available during the month of August. So before the start of school, you will receive that information on what the student accident insurance covers and how parents, if it's necessary, are able to access that and what the deductibles are. And that was a community update because we wanted to make sure we had time for the special education review, which we already moved up. That is the quickest ever. Yes,
Okay.
it is, Dr. Littman.
I like
Record.
Well, moving ahead on item 24A, policy updates. I think it's 24.
23C.
23C, sorry. It's the
Yeah.
first reading of a lot of policies. 5412, alternate formats for
You can
instruction.
just jump right to, may I have a motion?
Okay,
You would take it off the table.
okay. May I have a, oh,
Yeah,
I have to read it first.
Yeah, hang on. We'll get there.
What are we doing with this motion? Just
We're taking it off the table, I would think.
Came off the table.
the table. Okay, I just want to make sure.
Read the red, sorry.
Because I did some research about the one we spoke about last time.
You want to retable that one, right?
Yeah. Yes. That's my,
Okay, may I have a motion to take from the table policy updates for numbers 5412, 7460, 8110, 8130, 8220, 8240, 8320, 8330, 8340, 8360, 8120, 8310, 8331 as presented. Oh, Dr. Littman?
Thank you. Table. Yes.
Yes.
And who seconded it?
Ms. Pullen,
Okay.
any discussion?
I just wanted to bring up the controversial issue thing. I guess we need to retable, Dr. Runnell? Or do we just do that?
Now, I guess that's a process question for either the parliamentarian or Len.
Yes.
Because that is one of the items, one of the policies that we don't want to remove, right? We want that to remain tabled.
Yes.
Yes.
So it would exclude policy 8330.
So you would make an amendment to leave 8330.
Okay, so I make an amendment to leave 8130.
8330
80, I'm dyslexic. 8330
on the table.
table. I'm sorry.
Any, all in favor? And the amended motion passed unanimously. So, all in favor of,
Well, I just want to be clear because they approved that amended, right? They approved the amendment. Now you have to approve the amended motion.
Right.
Right. So now you just want the motion as amended. Correct. Yeah. Just want approval of the motion as amended.
you have to vote again?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
On the original motion as amended.
May I have a motion to vote on the,
You just have to vote.
As amended, yes.
and on the
Motion is
motion has amended?
Yes.
All in favor?
All in favor? Motion carries unanimously.
Yes.
Just a question. We're going to approve the remaining policies, right?
Next,
Proceed.
next motion.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there any discussion?
May I have a motion for second reading and adoption of policies 5412, 7640, 8110, 8130, 8220, 8240, 8320, 8340, 8360, 8120, 8310, 8331 as presented. Ms. Pullen?
So moved.
Mr. Banner?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimously. 24A Finance. 5-year extension for athletic trainer contract. Is there a motion to approve the 5-year extension of the athletic trainer contract as presented? Dr. Spicer, Mr. Mano? Any discussion?
Yeah. I mean, just to bring forward the value of making sure that we do have athletic trainers on site and
Absolutely.
provide all of the listed standards that they would meet with our student athletes. So it's
Absolutely.
just important.
Thank you. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item B, approval internal audit correction plan. Is there a motion to approve the internal audit correction plan as presented? Ms. Blackinger, Mr.
I'll second it. You can put me down as a second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Approve 5-year school bus transportation contract as a result of request for proposal process. Is there a motion to approve the 5-year school bus transportation contract as a result of request for proposal process as presented? Ms. Kasprak-Bogner, Ms. Blackinger? Oh. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item D, budget transfer. Is there a motion to approve budget transfer as presented? Mr. Bullen, and sorry, second? Ms. Bullen? Any discussion? No? Motion, sorry, all in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item E, approve property tax settlement and transfer amount from tax reserve 5181 transit. Is there a motion to approve property tax settlement and transfer amount from tax reserve at 5181 transit as presented? Mrs. Kasmarak-Bogner, Mr. Fulham. Mr. Fulham. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Approve property tax settlement and transfer amount from tax reserve 5017 transit. Is there a motion to approve property tax settlement and transfer amount from tax reserve at 5017 transit as presented? Mrs. Pullen, and second, Mr. Bascalia. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item 25, legislative curriculum. There are no legislative or curriculum matters to discuss under item 25 and 26. Personnel, item 27. Approve superintendent's contract extension amendment. May I have a motion to resolve and approve the superintendent's contract extension and amendment as presented. Mrs. Pullen and seconded by Mr. Manna. All in favor? Sorry, any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Tenure approval. May I have a motion to approve the tenure recommendation as presented? Is there a second? Sorry, is there?
Who's first?
Dr. Littman and Dr. Spicer. Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. District facilities and support services. Approve music booster lease agreement. May I have a motion to resolve and approve the music booster lease agreement as presented? Ms. Blackinger? Mr. Manna? Any discussion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Approve license agreement between Williamsville Central School District and Council of Heritage and Arts of India. May I have a motion to approve the license agreement between the Williamsville Central School District and Council of Heritage and Arts of India as presented? Dr. Spicer, Mrs. Pullen, is there any discussion?
Yeah. Well, I've watched cricket before. I don't know if many people have, but maybe we should have shown a little video on what a cricket match would look like.
That'll be a good idea.
Yeah, but we'll visualize.
Great game, long though.
Yeah, really.
I mean, there is a short version too, but anyway. I mean, I'll be abstaining from this motion. All in favor? All, any abstention, sorry, any abstention?
801.
Motion passes 801. State Environmental Quality Review Act. Maple West Elementary School. Temporary classrooms. May I have a motion to approve the State Environmental Quality Review Act for Maple West Elementary School's temporary classrooms as presented? Mrs. Pullen, second. Mrs. Beckinger, any discussion?
I have one question, just so families are aware, where will the temporary classrooms be placed?
They'll be on the, when you're facing
East
Maple
side.
West, they'll be on the right-hand side. So that land has to be built up, and then there will be 4 modular classrooms.
Great, just for their information. Thank you.
I have
Mr. Bueller?
another question. When will we know what particular classes will be in there, and how is that being chosen?
That is the question, isn't it? So that is going to be a school site-based decision. And Dr. Balin has been working with the administrators of the school to decide what classes would be best suited for the 4 modular units.
Dr. Brownhill, is this the trailers you were talking about earlier?
Yeah, and they're not trailers when you see them. They're actually modular classrooms. They're very much so classrooms, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have pictures, just like a little picture of one.
Any other questions or discussion?
Just so families are aware, I was in one a long time ago. They're not like you think, like you're just walking into this like little box.
No,
Right.
No,
They'll be equipped, and
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Smith will be on it.
they've evolved.
And they would have air conditioning and heating.
They have everything that's necessary for that students to feel comfortable. Absolutely.
Got plumbing out there?
No, they shouldn't have any of that. Make them rough it.
Nope.
Teachers dress it up and make it look like it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
going to be.
They absolutely
yeah.
do.
Thank you.
There's no worry. That's all.
All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Authorization of temporary classroom lease of space for 2023-24 school year. May I have a motion to approve the authorization of temporary classroom lease of space for 2023-24 school year as presented? Ms. Beckinger, second. Dr. Mano? Sorry, Mr. Mano? Any
Good to have
discussion?
goals.
Any,
Well, yeah. Well, I thought at one time we were purchasing these. Now we're just leasing them.
We're leasing at first.
Okay.
And then we'll see, because this will be part of the broader discussion about additions to our school buildings.
Yes.
So
And
we're
yeah.
starting with the lease, and then we're going to look at the additions to our school buildings, because we know that that's going to be something that's going to be necessary for our district in the future.
Okay. Thank you.
so there's a plan for construction after a few years?
Well, let's get this approved first as a lease, and then we'll talk about that, because that'll require a larger board discussion on what that looks like. We have met, myself, Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo, Assistant Superintendent Matursky. We've met with the consulting group that does our annual report to the board about enrollment, and they're doing an ad hoc study, an amended study right now, because we received a lot of information about new developments. So we need that new study before we move forward on any additional planning on additions for our school buildings.
I mean, just listed here. It's they have a timeline. Am I looking at the right one?
Yeah, for the lease,
No, yeah, I think
for
so.
the spaces at Maple West.
Well, it says January 2024 temporary classrooms available for use.
Mhm.
Okay, so if we're overcrowded in September, what happens in that
Absolutely.
first semester gap when?
And so it's great that we have such a dynamic leadership team and phenomenal administrators,
Yes.
because we figured that out for the
Okay,
school
good.
building. We
Okay,
have.
I figured you would.
All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item 29, District Safety Plan Presentation and Public Hearing. Review Safety Plan, Dr. Brownhall.
So I appreciate that. What we're going to do is we are going to actually keep this on the agenda, and we're going to move it so that at the August 8th meeting, we are going to have the tabling then. We'll leave what we have now, but we are meeting, as a matter of fact, I believe we're meeting tomorrow, right, Assistant Superintendent Scanzuzo? We're going to redesign the plan. Every year we get a new template from BOCES, but BOCES has no idea of the in-district changes that we made or the enhancements that we've made. So we're going to be able to cross-reference those with the help of our district clerk, Lynn Carey, so that at the August 8th meeting, you'll see the robust district safety plan and the redesigned safety plan with all of our previous changes and enhancements to it. That will be on the August 8th meeting. So we'll move this to the August 8th meeting.
So we'll move the public hearing to the next
Yes.
meeting? Okay. Agenda item 30, special needs and student activities. Appointment of impartial hearing officers for 2023-24 school year and committee for special education and preschool special education membership. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the appointment of impartial hearing officers in 30A and membership for the Committee on Special Education as presented in 30B? Dr. Spicer? Mrs. Beckinger? Is there a discussion? No? All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Item 31, Committee of a Whole. Does anyone have any matters to discuss under Committee of the Whole? No? Okay. Item 32, correspondence. Correspondence was received thanking board members who attended the South High School graduation. Any other correspondence anyone likes to discuss? Okay. Adjournment. Okay. This concludes our organizational meeting. Our next scheduled meeting is on August 8th. Thank you.
Got a vote to adjourn.
Reading it.
Oh,
Got a vote to adjourn.
is there a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
Don't all raise your hands at
Ms.
once.
Savannah, Ms. Poolen, is there a okay, second? Okay. All in favor?
10 people.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Congratulations. Yay.